Republicans. You're not saying you think Republicans are going to stop it.
I don't think Donald Trump wants another election. You think for a second I have 24 Trump 2028 hats. His folks keep sending me.
Gavin Newsom 2028 presidential campaign. He's grandstanding and making a clown of himself because he wants national attention. He tried the moderate thing for a month and realized it wasn't raising him any funds.
They say politicians will do anything for attention, but what happens when the spotlight they're chasing suddenly turns into a floodlight, exposing every crack in their carefully polished image? That's exactly what just played out for Gavin Newsom, California's perfectly groomed governor who's long imagined himself destined for the White House. For years, he's carried himself like America's leading man in waiting, the dazzling smile, the flawless suits, the hair so slick it could double as a mirror. But in one brutal exchange, Lindi stripped away the glossy surface, leaving the man beneath raw, cornered, and humiliated.
Trump crusader, because he realizes that it helps him with his coffers and his fundraising. So that's why he's on a tear, and he's a complete hypocrite. And I just saw that California now leads the nation in homelessness and unemployment. Maybe he should focus on that.
This is a guy who retweeted himself on Mount Rushmore. This is a guy who retweeted himself, dare I say, as Pope.
Yeah.
This is a guy who's hawking a Trump Bible. This is a guy who's out there selling perfume and with one of the great grifts, a coin.
But I want to get to the Trump is not hot. So
this is a guy who has merchandise.
It all began with Newsom's attempt to once again ride the wave of national politics by pivoting his brand. A short while back, he tried on the reasonable moderate costume, complete with a podcast where he even welcomed voices like Charlie Kirk. For about a month, he made an effort to sound balanced, pragmatic, someone who could appeal to both sides of the aisle. But when that act didn't rake in the donations he hoped for, he tossed it aside like a cheap rental suit.
He tried to be a moderate for about a month. I think it was April,
when he started his podcast.
Exactly. He started his podcast. He had Charlie Kirk on. He tried the moderate shtick. Realized that it didn't get him the donations that he wanted. And then he was like, wait a minute. Being an anti-Trump crusader actually gets me money. I want people to be aware that a lot of what politicians say on TV, on social media every day is to get the coffers, to get money rolling into the coffers, to get their fundraising machine.
The calculation was clear. Attacking Trump brought in money, attention, and applause from his base. So the moderate Gavin was gone, replaced by an all-out anti-Trump crusader. But the irony is impossible to ignore. While Newsom stands on national stages slamming Trump for being a grifter, a liar, and a narcissist, California under his watch leads the country in homelessness, sky-high unemployment, and crippling taxes. Even as he plays the role of righteous truth-teller, his own backyard is littered with broken promises, deteriorating cities, and families priced out of the very state he brags about leading. And this is exactly the sore spot that Lindi pressed on, live and unflinching. Picture it. Gavin Newsom, who has spent years perfecting his image down to the angle of his hand gestures, is suddenly facing someone who isn't dazzled by the performance. Lindi didn't just criticize him. She walked into the conversation carrying binders full of receipts. While Gavin reached for charm and practiced lines, she sliced through them with the precision of a surgeon.
I want to say that $1 billion in 100 days is not just run of the mill. This is astounding. And I have a duty of care to my donors who gave millions of dollars, and it wasn't easy for them to give. Some of them were paying in installments. It was a sacrifice for them. They looked for ways to give. So, people gave their hearts and souls to the campaign. They deserve a serious accounting to see why we were told that she was close or even winning in some of the swing states, but we lost all 7.
Well, what did they say? We heard on the podcast, but what did they say on this call? Did they accept any blame? Did they sort of talk about mistakes that were made?
No.
She began by calling out the grotesque amount of money his campaign and allies had burned through with almost nothing to show for it. Billions raised, billions gone, yet every crisis in California still metastasizing. She reminded viewers that donors sacrificed heavily, many giving in small, painful increments, because they believed the promises. And yet, despite the river of cash, every key swing state slipped away. Not one was won. This wasn't just a vague critique. It was a devastating indictment of incompetence paired with arrogance.
But not only did Gavin Newsom lie, he was the biggest liar. He was the one, and I was there. He was the one in the spin room lying to the entire world on the night of the debate, saying it was just a cold, nothing to see here, move along. But he is such a congenital liar.
But it was more than the numbers. Lindi reminded everyone of a moment seared in political memory, the debate night spin room where Gavin Newsom looked straight into cameras and dismissed obvious concerns about President Biden's health as if they were laughable conspiracy theories. He insisted it was just a cold. He sneered at anyone who dared suggest otherwise. Yet now, with the truth undeniable, his reassurances stand exposed as lies. And not just little white lies, deliberate deceptions told for political survival. That's the crux of Lee's attack. Gavin Newsom isn't just failing, he's lying. He's lying about Biden's fitness, lying about California's condition, lying about his priorities. His brand has always depended on selling a fantasy that California, under his leadership, is some beacon of progressive success.
Instead of focusing his time on this complete waste of taxpayer money, he has no agenda items. He has nothing positive to offer the American people. The only thing he cares about is himself. Everything is about him. And even Democrats understand this guy is truly fake. He's if you look up snake oil salesman in the dictionary, you would see his face right next to the definition.
I wasn't sure if it was going to be snake oil or hair grease or hair product, but you never know.
Actually,
probably both.
But the reality is harsh. Tense-lined sidewalks in San Francisco and Los Angeles. Families can't afford groceries after paying rent that rivals a luxury car payment. Businesses that once defined Silicon Valley now pack up and head for Texas, Nevada, or Florida. Reality contradicts every polished speech, every photo op smile. And Lindi pulled those contradictions into the harsh light of live television. What made her dismantling sting most was its simplicity. She didn't come with vague ideology. She didn't launch into abstract policy disputes. She called out the things people see every single day, the homelessness exploding on street corners, the exodus of employers, the hypocrisy of a governor spending more time auditioning for national office than solving the emergencies strangling his own state. That's why the humiliation stuck. Californians didn't need fact-checkers to confirm her words. They live the failures every time the power goes out, every time rent climbs higher, every time another beloved business leaves town. And the moment she said it, you could see Gavin's polished armor crack. His eyes flickered, his jaw tightened, his rehearsed grin wavered. For a man used to controlling the narrative, it was a nightmare, because this wasn't coming from a Republican rival he could dismiss. This was coming from someone inside the broader liberal ecosystem, someone who had credibility with the same audience he relies on.
It drives you crazy that people still speculate that you're waiting in the wings to run for president. I know it's not going to happen. You know it's not going to happen. But what do you think is fueling that speculation?
I don't know. I don't think much anymore. And I'm so proud of the president and the incredible job he did. Didn't surprise me at all. And I know it didn't surprise you. I really believe that. I said to my friend the other day, I said, you know, on this age, we can get into debates around fitness. Look, I'd rather have 80 years behind me than those 88 federal criminal counts in front of me. And so I feel very good about Joe Biden's.
He couldn't cry right-wing smear. He couldn't wave it away as Fox News propaganda. It was a direct hit from a voice his own supporters couldn't easily ignore. From there, the fallout spread like wildfire. First came the media, always eager for fresh blood. Reporters who once fawned over his every press conference suddenly smelled weakness. And nothing excites the press more than a golden boy falling from his pedestal. For years, Newsom enjoyed soft treatment, his speeches covered like gospel, his ambition treated as destiny. But now, the same outlets that once boosted his image began running with the cracks Lindi highlighted. The story was no longer about his presidential aura. It was about California's failings, his lies about Biden, his obsession with political theater over real governance. Then came the people themselves. Californians, long tired of being told their hardships were just temporary sacrifices, finally heard someone articulate their frustrations. For too long, Gavin has brushed off every crisis. Wildfires? Just resilience. Housing costs? The price of progress. Power outages? An opportunity to rethink energy. Homelessness? A challenge we're investing in. But these aren't abstract challenges, they're lived miseries.
He mentions 4 machinations that he plans to use in order to circumvent Trump, or in his words, Trump-proof democracy. And I just want to say, before I go into the 4 different measures, he is basically saying the American people cannot be trusted to make the right decision. Right. So I have to engage in these really slimy and subversive measures to undermine the will of the American people.
Families watch as their children dodge needles in parks, as entire paychecks disappear into rent, as rolling blackouts plunge their neighborhoods into darkness. And when Lindi cut through Gavin's sugarcoating, Californians didn't just nod. They cheered. And that's what turned this moment from a jab into a knockout punch. Because Gavin Newsom's power has always rested on perception, on the illusion that he's untouchable, inevitable, the future of his party. But perception is fragile. Once people see through the act, no amount of charm can patch it back together. And Lee's dismantling gave everyone new eyes. Suddenly, Gavin looked less like the suave future president and more like a snake oil salesman with a perfect haircut. The humiliation deepened when political insiders started to circle. These are people who've spent years propping him up, whispering about his bright future. But politics is a blood sport, and the moment someone looks weak, the knives come out. Allies hedge, rivals pounce, donors rethink. The shine that once made him a top contender now makes him look like damaged goods. And all it took was one woman refusing to be dazzled by his act.
You're not going to be a good person. Can you please not be a pathological liar at the very least?
He's unable to do that. They're conjoined.
I want to say, so he is out there doing a 180 on trans, but he's been on the forefront of trans advocacy all these years. Are you treating us like, why are you treating us like idiots? Or that we were born yesterday? We remember distinctly, he was one of the most ardent trans warriors. Not only that, he has a gumption to rewrite history and say that he knew all along that Biden's brain was melting.
Of course, Gavin tried to spin it. He always does. He spoke about his pride in President Biden, about his faith in democracy, about his supposed commitment to Californians. But the words rang hollow. Because when the receipts are clear, when people can walk outside and see tents for themselves, no speech can undo what's visible. His attempts to explain away the failures only underscored how disconnected he is from the lives of everyday residents. It was desperation wrapped in charm, and everyone could see it. This is where the humiliation cuts deepest. It's not just that Lindi Lee exposed him. It's that she exposed the yawning gap between who Gavin Newsom wants to be and who he actually is. He wants to be the savior of the Democratic Party, but his own state is hemorrhaging residents. He wants to be the fighter for truth against Trump, but he lies openly about Biden's decline.
Through the force.
His first thing is a special election.
What does that mean?
A special session of the state legislature. He would just call them back and have them do a lightning round of Trump-proof measures that will circumvent his immigration enforcement and other, for example, the deployment of the National Guard. Basically, Trump-proof anything.
He lost that in court.
But he doesn't have that power.
He lost.
He is lying. He's just saying whatever. As I said before, he's just saying whatever he thinks his audience wants to hear.
He wants to be the leader of a progressive utopia, but California under his rule looks more like a dystopian warning sign. And unlike many political scandals that flare up and fade, this one lingers because it's rooted in reality people experience every day. Californians don't need to be reminded that things are falling apart. They live it. They see the tents, feel the taxes, watch the businesses leave. Lindi Lee's words didn't just wound Gavin Newsom, they gave people a language for their anger. And once people have that language, they don't let it go.
But Gavin Newsom was on the front lines of defending Biden. He wasn't just a defender and champion of Biden. He was the strongest. He debated DeSantis on the national stage. He went out of his way to, frankly, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. He lied to the American people about the fitness of the president. He went out there again and again and said he was fine. Meanwhile, people like me were punished.
That's the humiliation Gavin Newsom can't shake. It's not a one-day headline or a viral clip that fades. It's a shift in perception. A reminder every time he smiles on TV that behind the teeth and the hair is a man presiding over chaos he refuses to own.
These aren't suggestions, and laws aren't optional. If you cannot handle your own state, the President of the United States has every right to come in. And right now, Gavin Newsom is treating public safety, he's treating our lives and our treasure as his plaything for his presidential campaign. His priority isn't the safety and the well-being of the American people. It's his own political preservation. He's positioning himself, trying to have it both ways, trying to pretend that he's all for illegal aliens, and then also that he's moderate. He cannot have it both ways.
And the cruelest twist? Gavin knows it. He knows the narrative is slipping. He knows people are questioning the image he's built. And for someone who has spent his entire career chasing inevitability, nothing is more devastating than realizing the inevitability might be gone.